You know, I love Larian's patches because they allow me to use clickbait words without the video actually being clickbait. These patches are freaking huge, and patch 5 is certainly no exception here. You guys are going to be so excited. This is the most feature-filled patch that we've gotten to date. Chapter markers below. Let's jump right into it. Now, first, let me inform you all that you need 130 gigabytes free in order to install the patch. That doesn't mean that 130 gigabytes are going to be added onto your computer on top of the Baldur's Gate 3 original file. It just needs to be available for its download. So if you don't have the space, you can simply uninstall Baldur's Gate 3 completely and then reinstall it, or uninstall a few other games on your computer. So some quick info that Larian gave us here before we get into the features. You guys are already staring at this down here. I know that you are. Over 1.3 million players have completed Baldur's Gate 3 up to this point. That's a pretty impressive number considering the size of Baldur's Gate 3 and the simple fact that many people don't finish games that they start, especially massive ones like this one. Okay, on to the new features with patch 5. Journey's End. Playable epilogues are the final chapter in your adventure. Common criticism of BG3 was the ending lacked material, lacked closure, lacked the ability to, chill with your companions and talk to them about the journey, etc. Larian has answered your call. Now, they did make a mistake here, and I confirmed this. This is why I don't rush out videos. I try to take the time to confirm things and show gameplay examples when I can. I'm not going to show a gameplay example of this because I want you guys to experience it on your own. Larian says, set at camp in High Hall with a view overlooking the city. It's not set at a camp in High Hall. It's set at the river camp in Act 1. Just know that it was a mistake on Larian's end. I'm sure that they'll update this article here soon. This new playable chapter takes place 6 months after the events of Baldur's Gate 3's story and is accessible to all players by loading the game prior to the final fight. I also tested this out, and all I did was load a load point that I had right before I needed to make the strike on the final boss of the game. Then you go through all the original cutscenes, and then it brings you to this new chapter. Don't want to talk about it too much because of spoiler reasons, and I want you guys to experience it on your own. Your epilogue is defined by you. This is a culmination of every choice and consequence that you've made since the very start of your adventure. A gigantic tree of permutations that leads to an opportunity to reflect on that journey before you say goodbye. For the writers of Larian, this final goodbye has resulted in some of the most complex writing in the game thus far, and it takes advantage of Baldur's Gate 3's reactivity across the entire adventure. And then we have Astarion, Gale, and Will chilling at a table with food at the river camp. You'll experience new cinematics that reflect the arc of your story, reunite with your companions to reminisce and trade tales, read letters sent by old friends, and keep abreast of the latest Baldur's Gate 3 news with updates in the Baldur's Mouth Gazette. So Baldur's Mouth is the news media organization in the city of Baldur's Gate, and you get to read some updates, which is pretty clever. Not sure where to put Scratch's ball? You can play a game of fetch using the Astral Prism instead, the Forbidden Squeaky. Though happy endings are never guaranteed, this final scene aims to bring closure to your personal story, based on your choices. It's a tender moment to reflect on the last 6 months since you took on your final challenge, together as a team, as well as your chance to say goodbye before the credits roll. What else can you expect here? Well, there's new music from Bobby. Hey, make sure to vote for Bobby in the Game Awards for Best In-Game Soundtrack. Brand new faces at camp and a special cinematic ending for Gale and Lae'zel, depending on your choices along the way. Patch 5 also features fresh threads, a hip phrase that my aged hands typed just before turning to dust. Now, origin characters also have received new outfits for this final party, including Shadowheart, who is going for a kind of cute, they don't even know I'm God's favorite princess party vibe. And then you can see Astarion wearing the Orin outfit, which will now drop as loot and can be worn by anyone, and it's also dyeable in the color of your choosing. So some of you guys will have a blast with that. Okay, on to the next major feature. Experience Baldur's Gate 3 like never before in Honor Mode and Custom Mode. 2 new modes. A lot of players that have already beaten the game and feel like it might be a little bit too easy now have been placing their own restrictions on their playthroughs. I've been waiting because I had a feeling that Larian will be doing something like this. So as you can see, I'm in game right now. We have Honor Mode. A fraught and deadly campaign awaits, limited to a single save file. If we go to detailed overview, Honor Mode is an intense campaign recommended for experienced players. Stronger bosses. The most dangerous foes in the realms are more powerful in this mode, with new abilities and legendary actions. Really can't wait to test that out. I'm excited right now. Stricter rules. Alongside tactician mode's regular difficulty increases, action economy and damage bonus rules are made stricter towards the end of the game. A lot of players who beat the game on tactician, including myself, you kind of feel like Act 3 is actually easier than the rest of the game, so I'm happy that they took note of that. Single save file. You cannot reload older saves in honor mode if events go awry. Your choices and consequences always stick. If your entire party is defeated in combat, your honor mode run will end. You will be able to continue your adventure in custom mode should you desire, but finishing it will not count as finishing honor mode. But I guess that's kind of nice. Larian allows you to actually keep playing. It doesn't completely start you over, but if you do decide to keep playing after you TPK, you are no longer going to get that honor mode badge or achievement, I guess you could say. If you are victorious and beat the game in this mode, you'll be rewarded with a bespoke dice set to use in-game for future playthroughs. I love when companies do stuff like this. They offer like these little rewards for players that really attempt something that is truly challenging. And the only way you can get that award is by completing the challenge. It's so motivating to want to go in and accept this challenge and complete the game just to get that bespoke dice set. So bravo to Larian for including an item like that. Larian also informed us that if you die in honor mode, you'll be presented with statistics from your journey, including how long and how far you've survived. Good luck, honorable adventure. You'll need it. And then we have the custom experience here. And customize allows us to change so many different things. This kind of reminds me of Solasta a little bit. As you can see, we can change enemy aggression here, character power, enemy loadouts, additional combat mechanics, and you can mix and match these to represent the explorer mode or the tactician mode. You can make enemy aggression on explorer and make character power tactician. You can just do some funny things. You can also turn on and off single save mode. You have the power to alter your proficiency bonus. So on explorer mode, you already have a +2 added on to the +2 that you start with. You can bump that up to even more to make it more likely that you'll land your attacks and also succeed in a lot of the skill checks in the game. Or you can put it to -1 and make the game more difficult. You could turn off enemy critical hits. You can turn off death saving throws, disable free first strikes. There's a camp cost multiplier, so you can mess with how many camp supplies you need in order to take a long rest. On balance mode, it's 40. On tactician, it's 80, but now you have even more control over that if you want more control. Some of you guys might make it cost a little bit more because food is pretty abundant if you know where to find it. You can make short rest, do a full heal, trader price modifier, multi-class, and you can turn on and off, although you don't have to multi-class in the first place, so I'm kind of curious about that setting. Always prompt reactions, hide NPC health, hide failed perception rolls, hide passive rolls and dialogues, preview dialogue check difficulty before rolling, hide difficulty class during rolls. So a lot of people are going to be very, very happy about both of these modes. I'm very excited for honor mode. I'm definitely doing a Dark Urge run, and I'll probably be live streaming it right here on this channel and my Twitch channel. If you haven't followed me over on Twitch, if you use that platform, I appreciate your follow. I'm a noob over there. I need your help. Moving on to more highlights of the patch. Many performance improvements, particularly in Act 3. Added dynamic resolution for PS5. Players playing on machines with lower VRAM RAM should see improved performance. The game is now available in Korean. While at camp, you can now access and manage the inventories of companions who aren't in your active party. So as you can see right here, I'm at camp. This is my evil run, so most companions are actually dead, but Astarion is not in my party. And on the bottom left of the screen, you'll notice this new button here called Camp Companions. If I click on it, it shows me Astarion in his bluey tighties here, and I can access his inventory. So this is really nice, because now I can just simply, if I needed something from Astarion, I can take his bow and just drag it over to Shadowheart. This was a very highly requested feature, and I'm so happy that Larian has put this in. This is one of the highlights, in my opinion, of this patch, for sure. As you can see, I added black rectangles over the spoilers. We'll go over the spoilers after I finish the other highlights section. Shadowheart will always be the owner of the artifact during the tutorial if she is a follower. Basic action variations that share a hotkey by default will now gain a hotkey according to a certain priority order. A romanced Minthara can now refer to her bond with you using a drow word for deep, unbreakable love. Nice little immersion improvement touch right there. Fixed a bug where party members would sometimes not change back into the armor set they were displaying before entering camp. Improve the physics of characters and walls to prevent NPCs being able to shoot through ceilings inside houses. The loading screen art now unlocks gradually as you progress through the game. Fixed the screen going black during Astarion's endgame romance scene. Added some additional audio and cinematic work to the intimate scene with the drow in Sharessa's caress. Wild shapes that do not have weapons will now benefit from having the tavern brawler feet. All right, now I'm going to go over those spoilers. You can keep watching, but make sure to close your ears until you see the scene change to where it doesn't say spoiler anymore. Becoming half a Lithid will now also visually affect your eyes. You can now talk to Mulmore about her contract with Raphael in the Guild Hall. Withers will sneakily resurrect any dead companions that fell before the final battle so they can join the ending cinematics. What a helpful skeleton. That's a nice little improvement. Gave Jaheira her own scene with Danthalon if she approaches him alone. Fixed an issue where Gal's scene with Mystra after the final combat of the game only played if you had no one else in your party. Made cinematic tweaks to restore sections of Astarion's Act 3 Ascendant sex scene. Improved companion reactivity when making the decision before the Netherbrain. And the last spoiler, Boo will no longer take damage when thrown. And that was it for the highlights section. I am going to keep on reading like the other patches. There's just pages and pages of other changes, improvements, and fixes, and I'm going to pick out ones that I feel like stand out to me, and I'm just going to read them off to you guys. You don't really have to watch anymore. I'll probably just have some gameplay playing, and I'm just going to read off things that stand out. So if you guys are leaving right now, thank you so much for watching. As always, much more Baldur's Gate 3 content to come. Let's continue on. And one more thing to note, in this section, I'm not separating out the spoilers. I feel like 60% of it is spoilers, so I'll just leave this as a spoiler section, I guess. So there were 11 crash fixes, but let's jump into combat and balance. Fix the combat AI, sometimes not checking if it can use items. Fix the Netherbrain, sometimes only being able to cast one spell per round instead of several. In Tactician mode, the hag can no longer be killed by being shoved into chasms. She can cast magic after all. Fix summon duration starting to tick down too soon while summoned in combat. Attacks against a paralyzed or unconscious target no longer automatically hit, but any hits that do land deal critical damage. Hope from the House of Hope now carries half-plate armor and a light crossbow. She also now carries a more powerful shield. Battlemaster maneuvers now correctly add your proficiency bonus to the difficulty class. Half-Orc Savage Attacks passive now also applies to offhand weapons. All gathered allies that can be summoned for the final battle in the Upper City will now have their resources restored if they've used them elsewhere in the adventure. Resolve passive now triggers correctly. In the combat with Raphael, when he transforms into the Ascendant Fiend, all surrounding fires will turn into Hellfire. No such thing as a free lunch. Consuming the Noble Stalk Mushroom during combat now costs an action. Fix an issue with the Tavern Brawler feat where damage bonuses were being incorrectly applied multiple times while making a throwing attack. Raphael's Soul Pillar proximity condition will now activate at the start of combat, rather than on its first turn. The Potion of Angelic Slumber now restores War Priest's Clerics extra attack charges. Dark Urge players should now always have the option to kill the Netherbrain in the game's final combat. The reaction pop-up, which shows multiple possible reactions for multiple party members, now always allows you to change your mind after picking a reaction for a party member. Fix being unable to switch characters if a reaction pop-up opens for a split-screen player that is far away. Fixed occasional T-poses and frozen animations related to the incapacitated condition. Fixed combat information, such as advantage and disadvantage, not displaying when targeting a specific body part of a larger creature. Loading a game that was saved on the roll results screen will now keep the results of that roll. You can no longer loot the entire inventory of unconscious traders. Instead, you have access to a limited selection as with dead traders. Nice try, pacifists. Improve the visuals for dropping a dead body out of your inventory and for moving living bodies out of Wither's wardrobe. Added the intensely satisfying ah sound for players who short rest using a keybind rather than a UI button. Shadow Step is no longer blocked by silence. Shar is now aware of Shadowheart's actions even if she's using disguise itself. Knocking out Anti-Ethel no longer prevents her from changing into hag form. Dipping weapons into toxin puddles makes attacks toxic for 10 turns rather than until long rest. Lifting the rocks from the dead flaming fist at the Last Light Inn now requires a strength check rather than athletics. Flaming Fist reinforcements can now be summoned to deal with criminal activity on the bridge leading to Worm's Rock Fortress. The creatures summoned with the spell Conjure Woodland Being, the Dryad and Woodwode, are now capable of jumping. Thank God. Non-damaging spells no longer remove the turn conditions from characters. Effects that cure poison will now also remove Drow Poison and Crawler Mucus. Perma-burning weapons can no longer be coated in other substances. In short, no double dipping. The Emperor can no longer use the Extract Brain ability on prone creatures. He prefers his food to be fighting fit. The lucky feat now works even while players are polymorphed or wild-shaped. Nice improvement. Fixed Conjure Minor Elemental at level 6, it will now correctly summon ice mephits instead of making you settle for lowly mud mephits. Animated armors are now immune to sleep. The Hag no longer has her passives while disguised as Mayrina. Starting combat by spending resources while in turn-based mode will now properly subtract the resources, like in real time. Okay, moving on to flow and scripting. Mizora should appear for her Judgment of Will only when Karlach is actually dead. If Will somehow managed to avoid Mizora's punishment for keeping Karlach alive, he'll be punished retroactively. The Dark Urge should now be able to attempt to deflect Celeritas Fell's suggestion of killing a companion to Karlach or Lae'zel if they have a bad relationship. If you connect with Gale during the spell teaching scene but do not wish to pursue romance with him, you are now able to talk to him about Terra. Fixed Astarion accidentally telling the Dark Urge's future. Fixed Companion sometimes confusing you for the Dark Urge or Gale. Fix the romance scene with Astarion triggering 2 wrong rests in a row in certain conditions. Fix the night where Astarion tries to bite you triggering, even if you learned about him being a vampire spawn beforehand. Shadowheart's artifact tinkering scene will now only play once you have been introduced to the artifact. Fixed speaker prioritization in the Magic Mirror and Underdark Raft dialogues. If you choose to help Yrgir in Act 2, then you'll no longer need to persuade him to help you in the final fight against Raphael. Astarion no longer asks the Dark Urge about killing Isabel, even if they didn't. You no longer comment on Mole if you haven't met her before. Locke no longer blames Zevlor for his death if Zevlor died in Act 1. If you're romancing Lae'zel or in good standing with her, she'll be less abrasive if you suggest she hang out at camp. Fixed a multiplayer issue where the client's companion would reach to the host Astarion's avatar vampirism instead of the host's own companion. Gale will no longer repeatedly say the same line about dying in the follow-up to rescuing him with the Magic Flute's protocol. Karlach will no longer disapprove when the player resurrects a companion with Wither's help. Karlach's camp reflection upon leaving Act 2 will also trigger, if needed, during the transition into Act 3. Lae'zel will no longer become uninteractive after you dismiss her to camp if the romance duel at camp failed to resolve properly. She will also now be fixed if she was stuck in this state. Will should now trigger a proper dialogue when spotting Avatar Karlach after the goblin raid on the Grove. Fix several instances of sleeping goblins waking up wanting to chat when they should have been hostile. You can no longer tell Barkus about Walbryn at last light if they've already reunited. Ceres will now remember you in Act 2 if you met her in Act 1. Fixed an issue in Moonrise Tower's docks where you'd be stopped by guards several times despite having permission to go about your business. Fixed an issue where your allies would get angry if you committed crimes against your enemies during the Moonrise Tower's raid. Elson will no longer forget about saving Thaniel if you travel back to Act 1 while he's waiting at the lakeside. Dame Aelin won't mention that she wants to talk to Shadowheart anymore when she knows Shadowheart has permanently left the party for any reason. Latecomers to Ketheric's showdown fight will now have their summons and followers teleported into the boss room. Players who arrive to Ketheric's showdown shapeshifted will now have to face him person to person, not Apostle to Badger. Helson now deigns to pitch in against the Absolute's ghouls if they attack the Last Light Inn. Warlocks can now tell Yrgir to kill himself to be freed from his contract. Diabolical. Minthara now dies when left alive in the prison after Ketheric has been killed. The guards at Moonrise only question you about Minthara once now. If Nightsong is downed when the Apostle of Merkel is defeated, she'll get up in time to participate in the ensuing cinematic. Minthara now cannot be stuck as a follower rather than a recruitable companion at Moonrise Towers. Minthara will still appear at Moonrise Towers if she was knocked out in Act 1. If Isabel is thrown off her balcony, she'll make more of an effort to get back upstairs again. Players will no longer be able to join an active game where the characters have reached the Morphic Pool or beyond. The Flaming Fist will appear at the Wine Festival crime scene if Cora and Roger were killed during a long rest. The Mind Flayer at the Worms Crossing Windmill will now take the body after you offer it. Yrgir should correctly react in the House of Hope to the fact that he was tricked and killed himself in the Gauntlet of Shar. Fix the Emperor sometimes saying the wrong lines during combat in High Hall. Dame Aelin no longer waits 10 days to bring up the time she killed Ketheric Thorm. I must have missed that dialogue. The party will no longer talk about Astarion choosing to remain a vampire spawn if Cazador's ritual was interrupted before he could choose. Umberlee's worshippers are now considerably more security conscious about the donations in the Water Queen's house. Saravak calling you an interloper no longer causes all of your allies to attack you. Karlak no longer thinks she's left the Hells when you explore the rocky outcrop near Hope's prison. Fix some in-game events not correctly reacting to long rests in the lower city. Now on to some of the journal updates. This is pretty rough on my voice. Holy cow, I'm pretty tired right now. Learning about the true nature of Astarion in the Kresh, or the Shadow Curse lands, now results in a journal entry. Fixed an unclear journal entry in the Solve the Open Hand Temple Murders quest. Destroying the Susur Bark now closes the Finish the Masterworks weapon quest. The journal entries for the Investigate Cazador's Palace quest no longer refer to Alma's promise of help if she didn't make you that promise. And then we have a ton of performance and optimization improvements, but I don't think we need to go over all of them specifically. Let's just hope that the game runs better than it did in patch 4. Some notable UI improvements: stop the examine button occasionally disappearing, improve the connection between the combat log messages about you losing stealth and the reason for losing it. You can now sell and barter items inside containers when trading. Improved grouping and sorting of items in containers while trading. Fix some issues with loot containers not closing when you take all the items. Fix the active spell sometimes not glowing on the hotbar. The combat log will now display the relevant weapon name when applying a weapon's damage bonus. I like that. Pressing extract on an alchemical ingredient in the inventory now correctly opens the alchemy menu. Wither's Wardrobe of Wayward Friends now has a map icon. Then there were some improvements to tooltips, icons, and portraits. Improvements to character creation and level up, several controller improvements in character creation user interface. And speaking of controllers, there's also just plenty of general controller fixes, and also some split screen problems have been solved. Moving on to level design. The hanging cages in Cazador's dungeon will no longer tell you they're safe to step on, only to drop you to your death in the chasm below. Fixed and decorated some pressure plates in Cazador's palace. Added additional treasure to a chest in Cazador's palace. The Wraithwind Tollhouse safe now has better loot. Yay. Added more loot to the library in the Rosy Morn Monastery. Improved the treasure available in Wraithwind and the Silent Library. Added more containers with loot to the Dock Warehouse basement. A chest in Worms Rock Prison now has improved loot. The Torturers in Moonrise Towers now have more loot. Improved the quality of loot available in the Hidden Vault in the Emerald Grove, among plenty of other improvements in level design. A lot of additional and improved loot in that category. There are also a ton of animation improvements, lighting improvements, sound improvements, art additions, VFX improvements, a ton of cinematic improvements. And writing has its own category as well. A few notable improvements in the writing category are: name the tattoos in character creation. Added an extra line for Helson so he acknowledges an outcome where you resolve the Grove situation, but the goblin leaders weren't necessarily killed. Companions can now make additional comments when learning about Gale's orb. Improved clarity in the Rescue the Tieflings quest journal when opening the Tiefling cells. And wow, that was a lot. If you made it to the end of the video, as always, let me know down below in the comments. This was a long one, but a lot of stuff coming with patch 5, which is out now. A lot of you guys are probably downloading it. This seems like a pretty good reason to return to Baldur's Gate 3 if you've already beaten it and you're taking a break. Come in, play Honor Mode, try out one of your Origin characters that you haven't done before. I'm excited to jump into it. I might be playing Dark Urge tonight. Catch you all in the next one.